Welcome to another episode of the GCN Tech Clinic, where you submit questions regarding, bike problems that you're having, bike maintenance, tech questions, things like that, and then we aim to answer them. And you can submit your questions using the hashtag AskGCNTech. And then if you've not been here before, usually how it goes down, I attempt to answer your questions and I have a brew in my GCN mug. Nice, right. So without further ado, this week's first question comes from George, who says he recently bought a pair of Mavic UST rims, which came with the Mavic universal tubeless tyres fitted, and he deflated them so that he could add the sealant in and then re-inflated them. But when he re-inflated them, he didn't hear the popping sound that you get when the bead pops on to the rim and tells you that the tyre has become seated. Having the tyre seated is crucial for having that airtight tubeless interface between the tyre and the wheel. Now, he's worried that because he didn't hear the pop, his tyres aren't properly seated when he's pumped them up. Well, it sounds like they are. What can often happen if you've got a really good interface between your tyre and your wheel, when you deflate them, they stay seated. And then, so you won't hear that popping because they don't have to reseat, and they just inflate really easily once again. It's actually a really good sign of a really good tubeless tyre and wheel interface. And it's actually quite a nice safety thing because it means that there's less chance of the tyre becoming unseated and coming off the wheel if it does deflate and while you get a blowout or something like that. So yeah, I'd be encouraged by that. That sounds good and pretty normal. Next question is from Radita Ifran, who says, "Hi Ollie and Manon, just wondering, will it be the same effect if I lose a kilogram of body weight compared to a kilogram of weight off my bike?" Well, it's a good question, this, and it's something that people ask quite a lot. We've done videos on does bike weight or body weight matter the most, so you can check those out. But I would say, unless you are sort of 6% body fat and just about to get into the Tour de France, then everyone can probably lose a bit of weight. But factor in that when you lose weight, you may also lose some muscle, which could mean you could lose some power. And something else people also say is rotating weight is more important. Now, this is actually, to the best of my understanding, having spoken to mechanical engineers on this very subject, a fallacy, and actually not true. I'm actually going to do a video on it in the near future, sort of GCN Tech feature. So stay tuned to that. I've got some nice experts I'm going to talk to for that. So that should be really interesting. That considered, the difference between losing weight off your body or your bike is going to be very, very small. Overall, you can sort of include it as a general whole system mass, and you should be more concerned about looking at your system mass, and they both contribute to the same thing. And I say it's going to be very small if everything else remains constant, but in all likelihood, other things don't remain constant when you lose weight. So for example, if you lose body weight, that's probably going to coincide with you becoming fitter. And so you'll probably become faster as well as a bonus. So yeah, it's a complex question, but on the whole, if you've got, some body weight to lose, why not? You'll definitely feel the benefit of a kilo or two when you're riding up hills. Next question is from David Hogg. He says he has a 10-speed setup on his bike, Shimano 105 5700, and he's just got a power meter, a 4i left-hand crank, but it's 11-speed 105, his power meter, and his rest of his group set is 10-speed 105, the previous generation. He's wondering if he can upgrade to the modern, like the 11-speed chain set, despite the fact the rest of his group set is 10-speed. Because he doesn't like having mismatched crank and chain set. I would say don't worry about having a mismatched crank and chain set. Most people won't even notice. They're on different sides of the bike. And I wouldn't worry too much about it. The other thing is, I would be very wary of swapping out the chain set for an 11-speed one when you have a 10-speed drivetrain. This is because the gap between the chain rings on the 11-speed chain set is ever so slightly different, and also the ramping on the teeth that swap the chain from either chain ring is ever so slightly different. You'll probably find that it does work, but having spoken to Shimano about this in the past, the shifting won't be optimal and you might risk dropping your chain when you shift between them. Personally, what I would do is wait till your 10-speed drivetrain components wear out and then upgrade that drivetrain to 11-speed when you need it. If it's working perfectly fine right now, save your money. There's no need to upgrade it. Use the components, they're really good. The next question is from Nick W, who says that it's a complicated matter, but why does Garmin and Strava data vary so much on some days? He's got a Garmin head unit, and he says if his average speed that he sees in his Garmin head unit is different to the average speed he sees when he uploads his ride to Strava. Well, there could be a couple of reasons, okay? So, firstly, the data that you see on your head unit, that could be, I mean, if I don't know if you're using a speed sensor, you've not said in your question, but if you are using a speed sensor on your bike, the head unit could be reading the speed sensor data, and then the Strava file could be going off the GPS data. And so there could be a discrepancy there, there often is. So it could be that. The other possibility is that you have an auto pause speed set on your Garmin that's different from Strava. So if your auto pause is, say, set at 5 kilometers an hour, then your computer will read a slightly higher average speed because it's going to auto pause every time you drop to 5 kilometers an hour or lower. Whereas Strava will just sort of keep on running. So that's another possibility that it could be as well. But overall, I wouldn't worry about it too much. People focus on average speeds too much. There's other things that you should focus on if you want to get fitter, and other more important metrics to your ride, as average speed can vary so much depending on a whole host of other variables. So yeah, I'd look at other things and don't let it worry you too much. Next question is from Hidi Imanaga. I'm sorry, I've completely mispronounced your name there. Sorry, did my best, but you've got a great question. So you say, what is the difference between a press fit and a threaded bottom bracket? Which is better? That is a really good question. I'm gonna try and answer it in a simpler way as possible. So, a press fit bottom bracket is where the bearings are pressed into the frame. Now sometimes this is straight into the carbon of the frame of a carbon bike, but in most cases there is an alloy sleeve which is fitted inside the bottom bracket of the frame, and then the bearings are pressed into either side of that sleeve. Now this is different from a threaded bottom bracket where, again, you have a sleeve that's put inside the carbon frame of a bicycle, but then that sleeve has threads on the inside of it, and then into that are bearings that are fitted into cups that are screwed into either side of the frame and then meet in the middle. Now, the difference here is that the bearings on the press fit system are sort of just held in place by friction into the frame. It's what you call an interference fit. And there are less sort of component parts in that system, and usually press fit systems are slightly lighter than a threaded system. But there is a perception amongst pro mechanics and mechanics that work in bike shops that the sort of threaded system can often be more reliable, less prone to creaking, and require less frequent servicing. Now, some people do contend that this isn't true, and without question, you can get threaded bottom brackets that are of excellent quality. In terms of which is the better system, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages to both, and it's hard to generalize because more often than not, you'd have to go on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes, frames can be better. Some frames can be better than others. So there isn't a clear-cut answer, I'm afraid. But I think personally, I'm a fan of threaded bottom brackets. Right. Next question is Andrew Pollard, who says, I'm looking at getting my first road bike, and I was wondering what difference an 11-speed chain set would make rather than a 9 or 10-speed. Thanks. Well, on your first road bike, it's not going to make a huge amount of difference. My first road bike was 9-speed, and that didn't hold me back at all. I went on loads of adventures on it, rode massive rides, rode up mountains, even did some races on it, and it was great. 11-speed is is brilliant. You know, it's definitely better than 9-speed, but it's not loads better. It does give you a nicer spread of gears and a few more options. And when it comes to replacing parts, 11-speed is a lot more common now. So, you know, if you're gonna have a few more options in terms of upgrading and repairing and things like that, and it'll be a bit easier. But you know, if you can't afford an 11-speed bike right now, then that's not a problem. 9-speed is great, and I'd be more than happy going down that route. Personally, I would value having like really good brakes on your bike over the difference between 9 and 11-speed. So if you're going to spend your money somewhere, I'd probably say good brakes, especially on more sort of budget, lower end bikes. But yeah, that would be my advice. And the last question this week comes from Jeremy Wong, who says, "Hi Ollie, love the show. Do you have any tips for servicing Shimano SPD SL pedals without the correct tool?" We do have tips on servicing Shimano pedals. We're going to do, I'm glad you asked that question, because we're actually planning to do a maintenance video on that very subject. So stay tuned for that. Now, I hope we've answered your questions this week, and if we haven't, then don't worry, you know, it's always a pleasure answering your questions, so get them in using the hashtag AskGCNTech in the comments section down below, or you can drop us a message as well. And yeah, we'll aim to answer your questions in a future episode. And thanks for all your comments on last week's show, especially the ones about Cannings looking like he's touched a plug socket, or he looks like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. They amuse me, although I'm not really one to talk right now with my Lube King party at the back. So, right, well, I'll catch you next time. And if you like what we do and would like to support the channel, then you know, watch some more videos and stuff, and head over to shop.global cycling network, and then you can get a receptacle for your libations. Till next time.